Good morning everyone, I'm back with another painting video. As I'm sure you can see, we're in slightly more familiar territory for me this time. I'll be showing you a quick and simple method for painting a Black Legion force for Warhammer 40k. You can see the process in this video to get the basics done on pretty much any unit. I'll be demonstrating using some Khorne Berserkers and Chaos Cultists today, as well as this Plague Marine. The Plague Marine, you'll notice, is actually unfinished. I do have a whole nother process I use for like gruesome gross Nurgle flesh. I'm hoping to do another video on that in the not too distant future, so we'll revisit that Plague Marine when we do that. One thing I want to note first is the bases. What I've done is I've PVA glued sand and bird grit to the bases before priming, then primed everything black. Just because that's how I prefer to do the bases. But because that takes a while to dry, that's not actually a very quick or simple method. So what I'd recommend, if you're using this as a guide to get an army done quickly, is to ditch the sand and the Gorthor brown paint and use a Citadel texture paint instead. You can use, for instance, Astro Granite, in which case do it just before the Nuln Oil wash, and wash that along with everything else. Or Sterland Mud, which again you'd want to do before the Agrax Earthshade stage and then wash it at that stage. I have seen Black Legion look good on red bases with like the Martian texture paints, but I don't have any of that myself. So that said, let's get on with it. About halfway through recording these, I got a new arm thingy to hold my camera up in a better position. So much like the models, the video itself will start looking better just after the Nuln Oil wash. The paints you'll need for this project are as follows. You'll need Abaddon Black, Eshin Grey, Lead Belcher, Retributor Armour, Cadian Flesh Tone, Rakarth Flesh, Mephiston Red, Rhinox Hide, Doomball Brown, XV88 and Screaming Skull. For the washes, you'll need Nuln Oil and Agrax Earthshade, and for the base, you'll need your choice of either Gorthor Brown, which is what I'm using, Astro Granite or Sterland Mud, or whichever other texture paint takes your fancy. The first thing we're going to do is give all the models a coat of thinned down Abaddon Black, just so that the base armour colour is nice and consistent, and it will make any mistakes that we need to correct later less obvious. Because Chaos Black, Abaddon Black and Army Painter Black are all very slightly different. This will also let us catch any places that our spray may have missed. So on Space Marines, that's usually like underarms, between the body and the backpack, places like that. Our next move is just going to be a dry brush of Eshin Grey across the whole model. That will highlight the black cloth in the case of the cultists here, and for the Marines the black armour. Okay, so what we're going to do now, once we've finished our dry brush, is we're going to go to the base and we're going to coat the sand with Gorthor Brown. Make sure this is nice and thinned down so that it can properly get over all the sand. It might seem a bit weird to be going back and doing the base halfway through doing the armour, but I'm doing this after the Eshin Grey dry brush, because otherwise we might wind up dry brushing some grey on our brown soil, and that might look a little bit weird. There is a method to the madness, don't worry. Now the messier parts are all done, we're going to move on to some of the detail. So first, we'll be painting all of the metal areas, or rather all of the non-decorative metal areas, with Lead Belcher. Means the bolt gun here, or most of the weapons really. Plague Marine's got some chainmail hanging down, so we're going to do that. And we're going to paint his Plague Knife while we're here. It's got some cabling on the back of the legs as well, because he's a Mark III power armour. And I usually paint most of the backpack. And as they're Chaos Space Marines, there's going to be various spikes and blades, sharp decorations, and just inside the backpack vents as well. I'm going to take the Mephiston red now and just do any sort of cloth that's on the Chaos Space Marines. I don't tend to put any red cloth on the cultists, except for maybe a little bit on the cult leader to make him stand out. You can also use this for any sort of tassels, top knots, things like that on the Berserkers or Chaos Space Marines. And then when you're done, just take a fine detail brush and dot in the eyes, or the eye lenses, on everyone except the Plague Marines, because I tend to give them yellow eyes later on. What we're going to do now is we're going to make our Black Legionaries really start looking the part by doing that distinctive gold armour trim. And we're going to use Retributor armour and a decent fine point brush and just go around and pick all of that out. And while you're doing this, you can do any decorative parts as well. Like, for instance, the Plague Marines tend to have these little bells, little hanging fly ornaments. Do the casings of the bolters as well. Chaos Cultists, I deliberately don't put any gold on them, pretty much, apart from just the little Chaos Star pendants that they all wear. For the exposed skin on the bare head of the Berserker champion, and of course on all the cultists, we're going to start by giving it a base coat of Cadian flesh tone. Last thing we do before moving on to the wash stage is we're going to give the skin a highlight of Rakarth flesh, and then after that we'll just go back in with lead belcher and tidy up any of the wires and stuff that he's got on his head here. And some of the cultists have a few bionic implants as well. Now we're going to bring everything together by giving the entire model a coat of Nuln oil. Everything we've painted already, the skin, the base, you name it, Nuln oil over all of that. Nuln oil is a weird choice to use to shade skin, but since we've gone with kind of a pallid, unhealthy looking flesh, we can get away with it. After you've done the black wash, those areas are pretty much done. You can go back in with the base colours and put a few more little highlights on, like I've done with the Rakarth flesh on the champion's face here. But for most of the models, I'm not going to worry too much about that. And we're going to move on to the areas that we will hit with a brown wash later. So first, all the brown cloth that's mostly going to be on the cultists. I'm going to start with Rhinox hide for that. So what I like to do with the cultists is just to alternate areas of brown and black cloth to save worrying about it too much. So his trousers are going to be brown because we're keeping the jacket black. The other one with the same sculpt, I'll probably do that the other way around. Brown jacket, black trousers. Just vary up a bit. I didn't mention it earlier, but I did go in and just do the gloves of the Berserkers in Rhinox hide as well. And now we're just going to use, what is this? Doomball Brown, that's the one. We're going to use Doomball Brown to highlight those gloves and all the brown cloth areas on the cultists as well. Next we're going to use XV88. That's good for leather, bone, horn, anything like that. So you can see I've done, say, the boots, the little arm wrap things, the belts, the pouches and stuff on the cultist. Some of the Chaos Marines have got spikes, some of them have got leather on them as well. I also use this for any little skull decorations, like on his shoulder pad there, as if they were all made out of bone. Maybe as a little arts and crafts project, or maybe they made war on a race of tiny little fairies, specifically to get little decorative skulls. I don't know. You can think about these things if you want. This guy's got a skull on his base. He's got two skulls on his base, I just saw another one. Just going to get those. Got quite a lot of skulls on him for a Plague Marine. The only horns I don't paint at this stage are the ones on Nurgle demons, because they're going to get their own treatment later on. The last colour we're going to use before the brown wash is Screaming Skull. Now I'm putting a little bit on a few parts of the cultist, like those wrappings on the legs and on the weapon handle here. The main thing we're going to use it for is things like skull and bone and horn details. So just any little skulls or big skulls or anything bone coloured, leaving the leather XV88. So now we're going to do the second wash stage, which is the final stage of paint on the model. That's going to be Agrax Earthshade, and we're just going to apply that to all the brown areas that we painted, as well as any of the bone colour areas, and also just give the top of the base a coat of that as well to bring it back a little closer to brown. All you need to do now is tidy up the edges of the bases with Abaddon Black and give everything a nice spray of Munitoma and varnish, and your cultists and berserkers are done. While we're here, I just wanted to go over a few bits I didn't cover in the main painting guide, just for extra little details and such, and just to show the various other models that have been painted with this same process. So this is a finished Plague Marine. Something to look forward to when I make a video going into all of these gross nurgly bits. There's a classic sorcerer here. So the gem on his staff, that's actually Stormhost Silver, and that's Tamiya Clear Red over that. Now those are quite good. I don't know how they stack up to the gemstone paints that Games Workshop do, but I think it's meant to be roughly the same thing, so that should do. The ghostly flames here on the Master of Possession, that's really simple. That is just, I started with Grey Seer and then put Ulthuan Grey over it, so it was really light. And then that's a wash of Coelia Green Shade, and then just a really slight dry brush of white, and those are done. The rest of him was painted exactly the same as the other models. Oh yeah, here we go. I like to use the classic bright yellow Black Legion transfers rather than the newer, like, dull gold ones. Just makes it pop a little bit more. The skin on this guy was painted the same as in my Perry Miniatures British Infantry video. That's Bugman's Glow, Kislev Flesh, Wash, Reichen Flesh Shade, then Kislev Flesh again. And the hair is Eshin Grey, then I believe that's Ulthuan Grey again, and then with Nuln Oil just to knock it back down a bit. The Plasma, that's Cantor Blue, a highlight of Techlist Blue, and then a smaller highlight of Lothern Blue just to make it glow a bit. The yellow cables, I think it's been a little while, that's Ulthuan Grey, and then the contrast Ironed Yellow over the top. Dreadnought here has some red cables, so those are Mephiston Red, highlighted up with Wild Rider Red, and then a wash of Carabao Crimson, and the missiles there have just got little highlights. I think that is Trollslayer Orange. It's been a little while. Last thing I want to show is just a couple of the cultists have got yellow or green eye lenses, just randomly. The green ones are Scorpion Green, and the yellow ones are Uriel Yellow, and I think I put just a little wash of Cassandora Yellow on that as well. Oh yeah. And there's a Rhino. The Rhino's been painted exactly the same technique as for the infantry, and with that, you should be ready to paint up a Black Legion force for 40k and start playing in no time at all. I'm not going to tell you how to paint other Chaos Space Marine factions because Black Legion are clearly the best, and everything just looks amazing in black and gold. Why would you paint it in any other colours? I just don't understand. Alright, well, let me know what you think, and if you painted anything using this video, show me pictures, and I will see you in the next one. I just noticed when I was watching back the recording, there's actually another tiny little skull under his foot here. So I'm just going to go and get that. Oh, and actually this little jerk's been holding one the whole time. Great, that's another skull.